Right, so who won the weekend? I think you know the answer. I know everything's very divisive in the world of wrestling these days. There's a lot of very, very staunch AEW fans who can't see anything WWE do as right, and vice versa as well. But if you watched both companies' pay-per-views this weekend, and you watched them with even a slightly open mind, I think deep down you really do know what I'm already about to say. And I haven't even been a particularly big fan of WWE or AEW in 2025 so far. You've got WWE's side of things with the continued mess they're making of John Cena's retirement run and the impact that had on WrestleMania 41, specifically the main event of night 2. And on AEW's side of things, you've got the whole mess that was, for a long time, the Death Riders storyline. You had a first 6 months of the year, at the very least, characterized by repetitive, annoying booking and bad pay-per-view endings. I don't have a dog in the fight is what I'm saying. I don't have a preference either way in terms of my own personal bias. I don't care which company does better, really. What I want is for both companies to put on what I consider to be consistently great wrestling. So then there's great wrestling all over the place all of the time. WWE did not give us great wrestling this weekend, I'm sorry to say. To the extent where I think that Wrestlepalooza could have even been called How Not to Pace a Modern Wrestling Pay-Per-View. Let's walk through the card. But just before we do, a very quick shout out to the lovely people at my Patreon. You can see them all on screen there in the upper tier. Thank you so much to everybody. You are what effectively allows this channel to be a thing. But yeah, let's walk through the card. And this is discounting all of the usual criticisms that most of us have of WWE pay-per-views in recent times. The long breaks between matches, the constant advertising slapped over just about everything, the fact that Brock Lesnar is now prominently part of things again, despite all the ongoing controversy surrounding him as well. Let's strip all of that away for a moment and try and look at this more in isolation, as a show on its own merit entirely. Well, it starts with Lesnar squashing John Cena. I thought this would happen, and that's not me bragging. I had an awful weekend in terms of predictions. I got like half the AEW card wrong, but this is the one slightly against the grain pick that I did get right. And it's not because I wanted it to happen, it's because I feared it would happen. The match itself wasn't great. It was a lot of finisher spam stuff, quite similar, I suppose, to Lesnar's main event against Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania 36, but it felt a lot more pointless. We've seen Lesnar do, we're used to Lesnar doing these type of matches now, and it's always exciting when he gets foiled. He didn't get foiled here, but it is exciting when someone does foil him, like Rollins at WrestleMania 31, or like Goldberg at Survivor Series 2016. But what was the point here? It all feels very, very pointless, speaking at least immediately after the event. I mean, yes, it happened to John Cena back in 2014 when Lesnar squashed him then, but it was exciting then and it was shocking because we'd never seen this happen to John Cena ever. He was still in 2014, pretty much still Superman. But this time, if anybody told you what happened at this weekend's match ahead of time, would you be shocked? Maybe in like a, oh God, they actually did that then, did they? They did that to John Cena. Maybe in that sort of way, but not shocked in a good way. This really felt like John Cena fulfilling one of his very limited dates left with absolutely minimal fuss. Which is even more frustrating because after that loss to Cody at SummerSlam a little while ago, we now know that John Cena can still really go in the ring. And I don't even really care that much about the result itself, it's more the way it happened. I think a valiant, heroic Cena loss to Lesnar would have been maybe just as exciting as a win. And I understand that, not every one of Cena's matches can be like the one where he went absolutely all out against Cody at SummerSlam. I can't imagine the toll that takes on the body. But if that's the case, then why book Lesnar as one of Cena's opponents at all? We know that Cena doesn't have many matches left, and therefore doesn't have many viable opponents left. And this one felt like kind of a massive waste of time, in my opinion. I mean, in fairness, maybe they'll have a rematch and Cena will win this one and get revenge. I suppose that could very well happen, but I still don't know if this is the best use of John Cena's time. I mean, I'm not the only person to have said this. I'd like to see Cena wrestle AJ Styles or Finn Balor, or maybe someone a bit out of left field like the NXT champion Obafemi, or Joe Hendry, for example, or Trick Williams for the TNA championship. Can you imagine that? Anyway, that happened. And then it was followed by the Usos' elongated entrance, which I actually saw a lot of people complain about. I think most people quite enjoy the Usos' entrance. It's all big, big fun, everything, especially on a pay-per-view, you want to make everything a big spectacle. But this sort of extended yeet-along felt like a bit of a slap in the face, I guess, after what we'd just seen to open the show. The match itself was all right, the Usos versus Braun and Bronson. It was what it needed to be. Jay suffered a bit of a scary cut towards the end, didn't he? But, hopefully he's okay. But I think it achieved what it needed to achieve. It made the heels look big and strong and scary, and it furthered those tensions between Jey Uso and LA Knight, who was acting as the special guest referee. Don't really have any complaints there. It was more the ordering of it that I think caused a lot of issues for people, myself included. It's not all negative, because this was followed by comfortably the best match of the night. Should have been the main event in hindsight, really, shouldn't it? Stephanie Vaquer versus Iyo Sky, a performance in which both women absolutely shone, and that finishing spot was spectacular. And I think it was particularly impressive because the crowd were not into it at first. They were quite energy sapped, I think, by what they'd already seen. And full credit to Iyo and Stephanie, particularly Iyo, I think, from watching the match just the one time, who did a lot to get the crowd back into it. And then, they were fully with them down the finishing stretch. Next up was the mixed tag, CM Punk and AJ Lee versus Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. I might catch flack for this. Oh no, I didn't fully like it. This was a really, really ambitious match, and that's really commendable for everybody involved, especially AJ, who did so after spending so many years away from the business, and fully fair play to her especially. But I just think this was way more than it needed to be. I just checked, and the match went nearly half an hour. And again, I think I'm going to catch flack for saying this, and I can't believe I'm going to say this. I think it could have taken a leaf out of Triple H and Stephanie McMahon's book in their mixed tag at WrestleMania 34. God, that sounds absolutely mad, but I'm going to stand by it, because that match was very simple and very effective as a result. After all the tension and the heat portion of the match at WrestleMania 34, Ronda got to unload some offense on Triple H and then finish Stephanie off in very satisfyingly brutal fashion. Job done, and it worked brilliantly for it. And again, I just want to stress, I commend all four of the wrestlers involved for really trying to pull off this very ambitious half-hour match. But I just didn't think it needed to be what it was. There was way too many twists and turns and shifts in momentum for my liking. And I hope, again, I'm going to catch flack for this, I didn't like when AJ was doing like her windmill strikes. Especially because Becky was so terrified of AJ in the build, and that was the correct thing to do for the storyline. But then it came down to her finally getting to brawl with Becky, and it was like, oh, you were scared of that? On the whole, though, it is definitely still a good thing to see AJ Lee back involved again. And the strikes aside, she can still definitely move well, coordinate herself around the ring, and, generally be a professional wrestler still. So good on her. Main event was weird. Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre, in my opinion, are both brilliant wrestlers. My issue here was with the storytelling. I'll reserve a bit of judgment on this one because we don't quite know where the story's going yet, but it did feel off. The story early on in the match and kind of the thread throughout was that Cody was still very physically and mentally shaken by Drew's attack on SmackDown, and it was a wonderful, very subtle selling performance from Cody, but so subtle that I wonder if some of the live audience even knew it was happening without the announce team to kind of talk them through it. And then Drew got screwed by the ref, and then Drew got screwed by the ref again, and then Cody won. And if this goes somewhere for Drew and his character, then fair enough. But we've seen this play out a lot of times with Drew now, where he feels conspired against by WWE and by the powers that be. But the point of him being a villain is that we're meant to think he's wrong. But in this match, he kind of was screwed though. But this could still lead to exciting stuff for Drew down the line, and quite compelling storyline stuff, granted. I think it's bad for the champion though. I'm a huge Cody Rhodes fan, and I have to admit the crowd, at least from how I saw it, they seemed pretty flat when he won. And the way the finish happened, I don't think made him seem very heroic at all. Made him seem lucky. It also didn't help that Cody had to really get lucky to keep hold of the title after not so long ago. He had to do absolutely everything in his power to wrench that title back from John Cena, who got comfortably and comprehensively destroyed in the opening bout. Speaking of the opening match again, that's a good segue to now talk about AEW All Out, because while that opening match was going on, we also were seeing the main event of AEW's show. And for WWE, it was not a flattering comparison. And honestly, I think I'm a little bit lower on Hangman Page versus Kyle Fletcher than most people who watched it. Dave Meltzer will probably give it somewhere between 5.5 and 6 stars, I'm guessing. And I think I'm a little bit less enthusiastic about that match than people might think. And that's some issues I had with the psychology of the match and some selling, particularly down the stretch. But in terms of the mechanics of the match and the big moves these guys were pulling off, the big moments, the tenacity, the intensity of the match, and the fact that both guys came out of it looking better than when they went in, well, that was all positive stuff. It was a big main event being treated very seriously, and it was about the story being told via the action in the ring, not the story getting in the way of the action in the ring, which is a criticism you could absolutely apply to some of those matches at WrestlePalooza. I don't think this was like AEW's best pay-per-view of all time or anything. It still suffered from some of the same old criticisms we have for AEW pay-per-views. It was too long again, I thought, and it had matches that could easily have been on TV rather than eating up time here. I also disagreed with various different elements of the show. I really thought Darby Allin could have used a win, especially in a match with the stipulation that Moxley wouldn't even have to get pinned to hand him such a victory. Also, I think Chris Statlander maybe could have beaten Tony Storm in a singles match and it would have had the same effect, although I guess maybe not quite the same shock factor as it just came out of nowhere in this four-way match. So I understand that to a degree. And you know, the ladder match suffered from guys running into position to catch people, quite obvious elements of cooperation amidst the admittedly very big, impressive spots and everything. What else was there? Eddie Kingston kind of missed the finish of his match. There were definitely negatives on the show, but I think overall it was a positive viewing experience. I mean, the good points, the strong bits were very, very strong. The FTR beatdown after their match I thought was great. The tax match was great. The triple threat was very, very good. And like I explained before, there were parts of that main event to really, really enjoy. And every match, you know, at least felt very different and distinct from the one before it as well. And often in wrestling shows, not always, but often, variety can really help things along. And there wasn't just variety on this show, there was violence and passion and drama and all the things we like to see in wrestling. And even though, again, it wasn't a perfect show or anything, it at least felt like AEW really, really tried. And I don't mean the wrestlers, by the way. I couldn't either accuse WWE's wrestlers of not trying at WrestlePalooza. Look at AJ Lee, for example, wrestling half an hour in her first match back. Fair play to her. I mean, in terms of the creative team, AEW's booking team clearly booked this show with passion and with creativity, or at least an attempt at creativity. Whereas on the other hand, WrestlePalooza, honestly, and I hate to say this, it felt a bit like rushed homework. AEW won the weekend. It's a clear victory for me. And when you're trying to go up against your competition and trying to prove you're the big dog and you're better than them and grander, then you have to try harder than that. AEW won. Oh God, please be nice to each other in the comments, please. I've been Jack the Jobber. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.